grays. What are the Bell-Daddies? Victoria Principal.
John, let me handle my mom. He's not your problem, he's mine.
There's the pictures accordingly. For the gray.
Fast and untamed.
Yes.
Generations of heroes, thieves, facing the sheer
Are you alright?
Over 30-year-old bottle of bourbon, bottled in the likeness of J.R. Ewing, was a merchandising dream when it was first introduced.
Different stars that are on the show.
This is the prop gun used. Up.
Now, if you travel outside the country, but Vancouver, Dallas,
This was the wedding gown Lucy Ewing wore.
Taking you over to the mansion and pointing out a few things along the way. These flags you see flying on your right are representative of the 96 different countries where the TV show was broadcast to. Also translated into 55 different languages. And we change these all periodically throughout the year so that all the countries get represented. If you look off to your left, this odd blue-looking iron structure is what remains of an oil drilling derrick that was brought here to Southfork back in the mid-'80s by the owner at the time, with his hope and dream to drill for oil here on Southfork. Unfortunately, before his dream could be realized, he went bankrupt. The bank came and reclaimed the derrick. So that's what you see is all that's left of his dream for drilling on Southfork. Looking off to your right, you'll see a rodeo arena that was constructed by Lorimar Productions back in 1984 for the 100th filming of the TV show Dallas. Still used by us today for some small horse shows and horseback riding lessons. And looking beyond the arena, the large white roof building, that's our conference center. It's 63,000 square feet. It has 5 atriums, 1 grand ballroom. Primarily used for conventions, concerts, proms, weddings, etc. If you look off to your left, past the Southfork is no longer what you would consider a working ranch. It's 234 acres, but we still do house some livestock and horses on the property. Primarily American paint horses, miniature horses, a donkey, some llamas, and naturally some Texas Longhorn cattle, which I'll point out to you just a little further on up.
So, raise your hand if you're a big fan. Raise your hand fan if you know nothing about this show. I just like to know who I'm dealing with. So those of you who are big fans, if you'll take a look over here, you're gonna know everybody here except for the gentleman here in the plaid jacket and the lady in the yellow blouse. And those are the people who start the story of this house. Those people are Joe and Natalie Duncan. Now, Joe was a home builder, a young man, a home builder in Dallas, very successful. He and Natalie were busy raising their young family. They had 3 little boys, but it's not really what Joe wanted to be doing. What Joe wanted to be doing was living on a ranch and raising horses. So he made enough money that in 1970, he and Natalie bought 200 acres out here and Joe built this house. Now I tell you that because as you're walking around today, I want you to remember that this house was built for a young family of 5, the Duncans, not for the Ewings. All right, so you'll keep that in mind as you see things. So in 1978, CBS and Laura Marr Productions decided to launch the show Dallas. It was a brand new kind of concept. Now the first 5 episodes were not filmed here. They were filmed at another ranch not terribly far from here. My Texas people know it was in Frisco, Texas, which she asked them to leave. So they very quickly had to find another place to film this television show. They got in helicopters, flew around, saw this place, and felt like it would be perfect. So they came and they met with Mr. Duncan and told him what they wanted to do. He said, no thank you. So they left and they went back to California, but they were back 2 weeks later. But Mr. Duncan had 2 stipulations. Remember, he's a young family man. The first is, you can only film on my property June, July, and August. So the production company agreed. The second stipulation, you can only film on the outside of my home. You can use all my property, but only on the outside of my home. Because guess what? We live here. So this house is 6,000 square feet. That is a big house for a young family in 1978. So the producers agreed. They went back to California. They built a 40,000 square foot set. So they would come here in the summers, do all of the outdoor filming, the things by the pool, all the barbecues, all the things on property, all the things in the barns. If you know, then you know, right? All the things in the barns. And then everything in downtown Dallas, and then the rest of the year they'd go back to California and do the inside shots, splice it together to make all of the shows for each of the seasons. Heard of Phyllis George? Anyone remember her? Yeah. Okay. Yes, she was a former Miss America. She was the first very successful woman sports broadcaster. And she happened to be calling the game that Sunday. It was a home game after JR was shot. At halftime, they were talking, you know how they do. They talk too much. But they were talking about how does it feel to be back in Texas and so on. And the conversation turned to the show. Well, Phyllis, very innocently, and very quickly said a couple of things in that conversation that changed everything for the Duncans. She said, did you know that Southfork Ranch is a real working ranch? A family lives there? And she gave enough information that people could find it. So the next morning, you see where this is going, right? The next morning, the Duncans wake up and half of Dallas is on their lawn. I probably don't have to tell you that people are crazy, but people showed up with get well cards for JR, flowers, food, all the things you do when someone's been shot, right? Well, over the next few years, the fans from all over the world were just rabid. I mean, they were here all the time. The Duncans would come home from the grocery store. There would be people camped on the lawn. There would be strangers swimming in the pool. Mr. Duncan's middle name started with an R, so some of his mail would be addressed to J.R. Duncan. People would steal his mail for souvenirs. But the worst was they would come up to the windows, look inside, and take pictures of the family. So in 1984, the Duncans had enough. They sold this property for $7 million to a West Texas oil man named Terry Tribbett. Now, Terry lived in West Texas. He had no plans to live here like the Duncans. He imagined this place differently. So he's the one that built the event center. He opened the mansion to guests like you. He hired staff. It became more like what it is today. But by the end of the 80s and going into 1990, viewership was down. The show did end in 1990. It was on for 14 seasons. That's a long time, but it was definitely time for it to be over. The other thing that happened in 1990 is Mr. Tribbett entered a business transaction, and he put this property up as collateral. Well, the deal went bad. Terry went bankrupt, and the bank took over. So they boarded up the property, fired all the staff, and they sold off all but 40 acres. So 1992, our current owner, Mr. Rex Mom there, the gentleman in the black cowboy hat with Linda Gray, bought it. He bought it because he's a very successful businessman and wealthy man, and he used to have events out here for his company. He loved this place, he loved the show, he loved Larry Hagman. So we bought it. He did two things right away. The first thing he did is he bought 300 acres. So now we're back to this big, beautiful property. Again, I encourage you to walk around when we're done. And the second thing he did is he invested $500,000 in the inside of the house to transform it from a house for the Duncans to a house for the Ewings. So that's what you're gonna see when you walk around. Now I'm gonna, and there's a glass, glasses. You can feel free to pick one. To get a picture. Totally fine too. You should tell them that. So you guys, if you want to pick up a glass over there at the bar, whoops, somebody just dropped something. If you want to pick up a glass at the bar, put it on. So now you have 17,000%. That's not the greatest picture. You can take another one. There you go. That's the idea. Cheers. So you guys can head down the hall. You can come upstairs if you want. Oh, there you go.
Yep, this is the way. Wallpaper like this.
And your picture was lifting, right?
Well, it's a little hard to do that. And I'm trying to. This bed is ridiculous. This was their bedroom.
They actually
Yeah, this is all a master suite. Here's the.
Oh my god. 2 toilets.
Yeah, one's a bidet.
Huh?
One's probably a bidet.
What's a bidet?
That's why it says bidet.
But what is it?
We're on video.
There's another.
Here's the big shower room.
so pretty.
This was done in 1970s. That's crazy. And this was the room for the bathtub.
Wow.
Can you imagine having your bathroom like this?
It's beautiful.
Oh my goodness. This is, I got a phone. Got a phone in the bathroom there, where the toilet is. There's a phone in there.
Everyone likes it.
I know, it's gorgeous. Oops, got me there. Yay! Best kind of champagne. Moet. Or Moot, as we called our last name. Did you see, that was my maiden name. See? Gonna dip your hand in?
Nope, I'm gonna put my foot in. He said I could, so I will.
Yeah, but then your feet are going to be wet.
Oh, not for very long.
What are you going to dry them off with?
The wind. Just to say I did it. Just to say I did it. Hey. 1 foot in the water, 1 foot out of the water. Kind of cold water, but not super cold.
Got it.